Hey, everybody. Just give us a second and we're going to get some of the team members up on stage here.
Um, so I've dropped the agenda here in the whiteboard chat. For those of you who are here for the first time, the way this works is we're obviously here in the stage. This is where you can raise your hand and offer to come up on stage and ask us questions if you want. There's also two chats above. There's this community call whiteboard. That's where we'll post any relevant links, potentially screenshots or images. And then the one right above that, the community call chat, is where you can just chat throughout the call right now. You can post questions via text if you prefer not to come up on stage and ask your question verbally. So that's kind of how things will work. We'll keep this to probably 30 to 60 minutes, depending on how things go. And the agenda is pretty short in terms of numbers of topics. So we've got 3 things we want to cover today. So first is overview of the first ACA staking program. So some of you may have seen that we've posted about this on the governance forum. Betty's going to give an overview of what that looks like, how it will work, and then get into details on that. The kUSD and aUSD stablecoin union. This is another topic that we've been discussing on a couple previous community calls, and there's also a governance forum post on this. So we'll get into details and answer questions, because I know it's of high interest to a lot of people about how this will work and how it will affect Karura users and kUSD users and so on. So we'll cover that. And then the third thing, quicker topic, but we'll get into the EVM Plus, give you some updates around where that stands, how you can get involved if you'd even like to get in there and kind of, if you're a developer, get in there and test it out and try things out. We'll give you kind of next steps on that. So with that, I think, Betty, if you want to get into ACA staking, and we can start with that. And maybe after every topic, we can just do a quick Q&A, as people may have questions for each of these things. So welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming, and good to see you.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. Hi, everyone. Hi from Auckland, New Zealand. Yeah, thanks for coming along. And so first topic is ACA staking. Yeah, so some of the context for putting out this program. So to start with, ACA is a fixed supply token. And usually with tokens that's got inflation built in, then you generally use a portion of the inflation and then give it out to stakers for whatever service they provide or not provide, and then you give a portion of the inflation and then you keep a portion of that. So that's usually how general staking is set up. And then for Acala, we've chosen down the path of fixed supply. It's actually fixed, so there's no minting or burning of ACA tokens along the way. And then for fixed supply, it was mostly predicated on the token economics of Polkadot, where we, except for the first, I guess, crowd loan and maybe the second, we would be able to sustain ourselves without printing new tokens to provide security, if you like, for the Acala network. If you don't need more tokens to provide the network security, then we don't need to print more ACA, and then we can stay at a fixed token supply, and then but still are able to continue to operate, right? And this is where the Acala treasury comes in, and then hopefully, we are able to reach our goal by building up this treasury, continue to grow the treasury, so we can be continually sustainable using the network security provided by Polkadot. So that's the context. So when we first launched, there is no ACA staking because we don't print. So we don't give out printed the tokens to folks. And this ACA staking program is a limited time program and with limited amount of reward. And the way that we think about it is relatively unique. So hear me out and see if you kind of like it. I'm sure you already read a little bit somewhere else or hear what we chatted about last week. But essentially, with a fixed supply, then we have no means to print and then give you that. Even with print and give you that, you're basically receiving a portion of the inflation, right? So we're not going to do that. The way we are doing it is, at least for the first program, the way we're doing it is using a portion of the reward surplus generated from the treasury, and then to buy back ACA on the market, and then using the buyback ACA, we distribute that to those of you who are willingly removing your ACA from circulating supply via staking, and based on the share that you have in the staking pool, then the reward are distributed to you that way. And then they kind of will provide us some data points in a few areas. So number one, this is probably the first reward surplus distribution. And obviously the Treasury have two primary objectives, right? Number one is existential. So we need to use the Treasury and then to grow enough Treasury so that for the foreseeable future of Acala's operation, well, including Karura, right? Because that treasury also cover a portion of Karura's existential, sustainability as well. So it needs to achieve that goal. And then the second objective is then, in the meantime, while that treasury is not deployed for crowd loan, then it can be used for liquidity bootstrapping, like as LPs and doing that sort of stuff to bootstrap the ecosystem. And then, so beyond those two, then we can use some of the reward surplus, so additional, like not from the principal, to distribute that back to folks who's holding ACA. So that's essentially that program, and then this also helps folks to remove their token in circulation, and then also directly distributing rewards to people, and then hopefully creating some positive effect for everybody involved in the community. So we said that that's a program mainly because we actually took out a fixed amount of reward surplus in DOT and then buying back ACA reward. So the reward pool is a fixed reward pool, and it's just going to distribute it over a period of time. And the reward rate is basically set. And then, and then if you stake your ACA, you're getting a fixed amount of reward every period, but of course, based on the share that you have in the pool, right? If there are more people staking, then everyone gets slightly less. So, and then there's also a loyalty program involved in it. So essentially, if you stayed till the end, and also you don't withdraw your rewards, you don't claim your ACA rewards, then you probably can maximize the amount of reward you get. But again, we don't want to force that behavior because folks will have different options. So you can withdraw. You can unstake ACA at any point in time if you want. If you withdraw ACA, then unstake ACA, you're only gonna not get future rewards, right? Your current reward, you still get your current reward. And then for the reward that you earned, because it's a loyalty program, again, you can withdraw that reward, claim that reward at any point in time. But if you claim it earlier than the loyalty program ends, then you lose the loyalty portion of it. And then that loyalty will actually go back to the pool for others who kind of like stake longer and commit longer to remove themselves from circulation. So that's roughly the program setup. It's similar to other staking program that we have for other tokens, but this is just a first sort of program that we set up. Yeah, so and going forward though, so obviously this program only going to last for between 2 to 4 months. But going forward though, we're gonna look at ways to make this a little bit more permanent. Basically, we can accumulate various different type of reward on the platform, coming from the fees generated, the gas, and probably also incentives from other dApps deployed on Acala that can accumulate a reward pool. And then for stakers, then essentially they can provide their staking token, whether going to collators later on, maybe they can delegate their votes to other people for governance participation, and also, maybe select councillors later on. So yeah, so we are dreaming up, that sort of program. But of course, we'll actually look at the data that we collect from this program and see the reaction of the community, and then we can propose something later on for a longer term sort of program. Yeah, so that's roughly it.
Cool. That's huge news. So at this time, if anyone has any questions, please feel free to drop it in the community call chat, or you could raise your hand here in the community call stage, and we'll invite you up on stage to take the mic. The first thing that comes to mind, I know that we just kind of explained how the length of the program. So we're going to publish a blog, and we're going to have guides on how to do this. But I guess one thing I wanted to draw attention to is that we're still in early adopter mode. Is that right, Betty? We just surpassed, I believe, 1 million DOT that has bridged over to Acala, but it's still very much like an early adopter phase. I wonder if you could touch on that a little bit.
Yeah, certainly. I can actually share this link, I guess, in the chat. So we are as early as you can get. We are literally, the only operational protocol right now on the network. For Acala, obviously the magnitude of assets is way bigger. So right now we're sitting at around I think 530 million TVL. But that is still very, very tiny, like a drop in the ocean, right? If you're looking at the sort of capital capacity of the Sama ecosystem. So if you look at Karura and also Acala, so sure, Karura has been running for 6 months, but if you look at actually the Kusama ecosystem, it is still one of the couple operating parachains out there, and then very few parachains are actually connected and doing business with each other. And from that regard, you can almost look at Karura, similarly where Acala is currently at, as a single operating protocol on the Polkadot network. And this is how early we are. This is almost like maybe Maker 6 or 7 years ago, or maybe Terra 3 years ago, right? You are the only one. So obviously that's why no one is using your stuff, right? No wonder there's not much happening, right? Although we've probably started at a slightly better position with already TVLs and also liquidity on the chains, but we have to admit that we are the only protocol almost like on the chain, and only if we can actually connect and then be able to compose with other parachains, other dApps, whether that's on Acala or whether that's on other parachains, then we can call ourselves composable. So a very useful sort of way to think about this is take Karura as an example. So we are working together with HydroDex, for example. And if you want to increase your aUSD adoption and then having more KSM holders and KR holders basically lever, right, their capital and then become liquidity, aUSD or kUSD, to provide LPs, then you need more than one trading venue. So right now in the entire ecosystem, for the native assets, there's just our own DEX that's trading. We are not even in the business of being the best DEX provider. So that's a bit lonely. So we actually need to open up more trading venues. So we're working with HydroDex so we can send kUSD liquidity over to their DEX. And then they have specific programs over there. Then we can help them to bootstrap liquidity, have more users, and in turn we have more issuance of our stablecoin, and then your KR is making work for the KR and also KSM or LKSM capital to work in the ecosystem, right? Essentially, then your one KSM, one KR then can turn into 2 or 2.5 or 3 assets flowing into this other chain and dApp. This is true for application-specific chain. This is also true for generic chains like A Star and Moonbeam. So we're also working with both of them. So any applications deployed on those generic chains, if they integrate with kUSD or later on aUSD, then we will want to bring liquidity over and then to support their ecosystem growth and TVL. We are essentially the exporter, right, of these assets and liquidity. And then they can actually grow their TVL. If they are doing really well, we will be doing really well, because then that means there will be more demand for the products that we create, which is the stable coin. And then also that will in turn effect on KSM, DOT, KR, and ACA, because that means those assets are working more efficiently and effectively. And then you're going to see the multiply effect trickle down from the sharp end, where the depths all the way down to the actual assets, right, on the DOT Sama ecosystem. So the way then you look at that is like we're nowhere even near that, right? We only just, I think, finished the test with Moonbeam to get the token across. So we are still very raw, very early in that stage of having assets cross-chain and then doing that. But you can see for Polkadot and also Kusama, because they are categorically different in terms of the ecosystem, this is like by design a multi-chain on day one, right? So then we are basically marching into something that's unknown in terms of architecture, also how you actually bootstrap it properly. This is almost like when you first have an EVM chain. You have no idea how this stuff work, and also compose with that. Well, we have a mental sort of design and thinking how this should work, but there's always changing market dynamics, and also technically there's different parameters that we have to work with. So this is like us and also other folks marching into something unknown, right? So it'll be very, I guess, not logical to actually use exactly the same model, like copy and paste the same bootstrapping model from a very much well-known system and then to a very unknown landscape, which is where we are at. But I hope, as I explain how this will pan out in the multi-chain bootstrap, it's the step that we have to go through, right? So this also shows you really how early we are. And for those of you who are maybe impatient, then probably just like, there are other chains that are using the more, I guess, copy and paste model, and there's a lot more things that happen. But for a completely new sort of ecosystem to evolve, there is hard work that we have to go through. There's a bootstrap period that we have to go through. But on the Karura side, you probably already can see some activity finally. After so many months trying to open parachain channels with other parachains, we start to have close to 20 different assets going to cross over to other parachains, as well as cross over from state mine. There's one actually being proposed. I think it's Polaris DAO. Like if you go onto Karura's voting, there's them listing there. So this is like just super raw, super early stage where these assets are start to flow cross-chain and start building this use cases. So yeah, so that's how early we are. But what's really cool is we have a much bigger canvas to build out an aUSD ecosystem. So later I will explain, the EVM Plus that we if you're really keen, there's a testnet out. You can actually deploy your DEX contract if you really want to. But still, it's still on testnet, so there's still rough. But then on locally on Acala, there will be native dApps, there will be EVM dApps that create use cases for aUSD. So there will be maybe I should leave that to EVM plus topic to explain later how we're thinking about launching it in sequence. And I will just stop there. Sorry, Robin, I see you.
Oh,
Yeah,
no worries. I just saw we had a couple questions, so I invited someone up
sure.
to stage because I'm sure there's a lot to cover there in terms of the early adopter program and the ACA staking that we're going to publish details on after this call. So Rai, take it away. Please intro and ask your question.
Yeah, so excited. Thanks for calling on me. I've really enjoyed watching what you guys have done so far. I hear about and I'm really excited about the ACA staking. I guess my question is, as I hear about AquaDAO, is this kind of some of the preliminary steps that we're just trying some things out, or how will the community shape how AquaDAO is formed and I guess moving forward?
Oh, yeah, great question. I think for AquaDAO, there will probably be more information getting released as the project move a bit forward. But AquaDAO also alluded to providing staking for ACA holders, right? And then the way that this will again, I mentioned we are thinking about longer term staking programs for ACA. So this is kind of related because one way that we can approach this is have a Acala ACA staking mechanism, right? And then this staking palette or mechanism, then it can actually aggregate all the rewards coming from the entire Acala network. So those reward sources might be coming from gas fees, might be lower initially, but it will be good as we bootstrap. And then there's also protocol fees, might be also low initially, but also will be good in the longer term. And then also buyback events like this one. So that's why this is like the first program we're trying out one mechanism, right? So buyback events using some surplus. And then the fourth way is, for example, AquaDAO allocated, some certain portion for the treasury participation, and that can come in as rewards, long-term rewards for the ACA staking program. And then in the future, other collaborative dApps that they can actually deploy their rewards into this staking palette to provide long-term staking rewards. So then you aggregate all of them together, and an ACA staker will just like get their staking reward in one place, and then as part of the Acala app, right? So this is one way that we can potentially evolve, I guess, as a network. And then as for AquaDAO, then I think depends on how AquaDAO is designed in terms of generating APY, right? Because I think for AquaDAO, one of the value proposition is to, I guess, to provide a relatively stable but not exaggerated APY that it can actually use the funds in the DAO to be able to achieve those growths for folks who don't necessarily want to get into the nitty-gritty of liquidity provision, going cross-chain liquidity provision, and then also get involved in a lot of the research and into the project and things like that. And then folks will just simply chuck in their aUSD, and then they will just get this stable APY, right? And then they also allocate a portion in their proposal for the Acala treasury, right? So then that is potentially they can use this ACA staking mechanism that the Acala network provides to be able to funnel their rewards and then uniformly into all ACA stakers. So that's still very vague. So but that's one relatively logical and rational way forward, so that ACA holders don't need to go to 10 different places for whatever staking that other people provide. They can just go to this one place, then they can enjoy whatever that comes out of it. So yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Great question. I'm going to invite
Yes.
up, and there's another person here who requested to speak, Thomas. While he's making his way to stage, Betty, were you going to say
Maybe
something?
I'll answer this question. Like, is Acala still plan to use collaterals from other networks? So the answer is yes. And also, the next topic we're going to have is like unification of kUSD and aUSD. Essentially, it is one stablecoin protocol to start with. They deployed on two different networks. And also for very much technical dependency, we had to launch on Kusama first, and then it's this odd relationship that we then are able to launch on Acala. But essentially, it is one stablecoin protocol, if you like. And then if all the risk parameters and managements are the same, it is the same coin that you are minting based on the risk parameters that's provided, right? So the unification is like technically logical, and then but more so, I guess this is a favorable for both sides in terms of you essentially unify liquidity to start with. Essentially, there's one aUSD liquidity goes to everywhere, and then the aUSD is serving 200 parachains connected to the .sama ecosystem by default, so natively, right? So that's one side of the story. And the other side of the story is obviously the Polkadot side has a much bigger in terms of capital, but the Karura side or Kusama side has a much bigger sort of like speed and experiments going on. And then this essentially connects the two economy, right, in a way. What that means is if you hold KR and then you mint aUSD, and then you are exposed to, or you can then access products and services and new opportunities available on Acala and the DOT ecosystem, and then vice versa. Whereas currently they are two separate worlds where they shouldn't need to be, right? They are one union. It's almost like European Union, right? And then this means trades can flow to each other's side freely, more liquidity, more value can be generated, and aUSD can serve both sides. And this also means in terms of collateral. So right now, essentially your KSM, your DOT, your KR, and a couple of weeks ACA as well will become those reserve assets, right? So these are your digital gold. You hold those, and then you essentially basically generate or mint aUSD, right? So holding KSM or KR or ACA and DOT, it's like holding gold, right? So you can just generate or mint dollars and then spend it or participate in various different programs. Right now, there's limited program, right? But that's what we're trying to build all together here is the ecosystem around the aUSD in both Polkadot and Kusama. So and the goal is to down the track expand that collateral sets, and this should expand it to as many parachain assets as possible, right? But of course, each one of them have to meet all the risk parameters. And then what that essentially means is this mechanism essentially becomes a liquidity extractor for all assets within DOT and Polkadot and Kusama, like .sama ecosystem. So it's not limited to DOT, KSM, or KR and ACA. And then they will be serving all parachain assets. And then if you want to go slightly further than that, who will be interested? Obviously, if you hold those tokens, you don't want to sell it, and then you want to participate in LPs and even earning some yields in AquaDAO or wherever money market, right? Then that would be a good way to go for it, right? And then also treasuries and funds, and those of you who hold multiple parachain tokens, whenever you see a new project, why would you actually liquidate and sell the assets, right? It actually goes against you're trying to support the ecosystem as a whole to sell DOT in order to invest or to support new projects or provide liquidity in new dApps. Instead of doing that, this is a lever where you turn your assets into collateral and then mint the stable assets, and then to provide liquidity or participate, access products and services. So this is really the game that aUSD is playing. The stablecoin is only 50% of the story. The outcome is a stable currency, but then really it's a mechanism to turn like a digital gold that's sitting there doing nothing but just accumulate value into something that's liquid and can have the effect of empowering applications in the ecosystem. So that is how aUSD is positioned, right? So it takes any perishing assets. So that will give you a lot of scalability in terms of asset supply, as well as scalability in terms of where it can travel to, right? And also aUSD or kUSD is available as native substrate asset, as well as standard ERC20 asset. So which also means aUSD can travel to anywhere outside of the Polkadot and Kusama ecosystem to other places. So there will be, some of you see my tweet, there's a bridge already, can connect to Solana, Terra, Ethereum, and other EVM chains. So aUSD is also natively can travel across to those chains as well and serve people over there. So that is the story, pretty much like right in front of our eyes that we can do. And then what goes beyond that is to the outside world. aUSD then is the gateway, right? So folks like current.com and fintech folks, they look at it very differently from us in the crypto world. So essentially aUSD to them and their user is just a gateway, right? So they onboard users with fiat and then they turn it into aUSD for only one reason: to access all the stuff that it can available within the .sama and anywhere that aUSD travels, and be able to provide products and services for them, right? So essentially then aUSD becomes that gateway for outside world to access anything that's available in the .sama. And then the cool thing about that for aUSD to be multi-chain stablecoin is then it not only can access financial yield products, right? That will be probably the immediate need for some of those users. But it also means aUSD can access anything that's built on Polkadot and Kusama. There's a lot of them, right? It includes metaverse, includes NFTs, includes index funds, includes gaming, sports, music as well. So there's a much bigger, I guess, universe or landscape that this can go, but that's further down the track. So what we are focusing right now is like very, very baby. The baby step number one is like unifying these two worlds, and then be able to bootstrap within the Polkadot and Kusama ecosystem. Especially at the earliest stage, multi-chain has a bigger inertia, like harder to bootstrap. So that's why we are, going out our way to actually connect with other parachains and dApps on our own network, as well as on other parachains, to make sure that we can bootstrap this. And this will have a much greater effect for DOT and KSM themselves, because without parachains being successful, and then without all of parachains can compose with each other, and each one of us doing really well, the ecosystem won't do well, right? So this is essentially a very positive community. Is like, as Acala, we want other parachains to do really well, and then they integrate with aUSD, and that actually basically guarantees our success in the end. So, but yeah, so that's a long way to answer that question.
More than an answer, I'd say that we definitely jumped into that second agenda item of the kUSD, aUSD union. So I just took the liberty of sharing the proposal that's on the forums. You can find it in the community call whiteboard if you want to take a look and read through it. I'm sure we have a number of questions, because this is sort of like, it's a uniting these two communities in a very sensible way, while allowing them both to exist as independent ecosystems. So, while you guys are marinating on some questions, I just want to kick it over to someone who joined the stage. Tomas, if you can intro yourself and go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, yes. Hello to everyone. Great talk, first of all. Congratulations to the Acala team. You keep surprising me. You're always like one step ahead of the game. So it's great to see like these two very elegant solutions for AquaDAO and for staking, to provide sort of staking incentives to market participants in a non-inflationary cryptocurrency. It's great. My question is regarding the merge that's going to be between kUSD and aUSD. I noticed that there's a bit of a arbitrage opportunity um, in the DEX at the Acala app with the SEX, with the centralized exchanges. So I just wanted to see if like that's something that you guys want to target with this, or are you just gonna leave it to market participants to to clear that off? Thank you.
Right. Yeah. So you are spot on. So essentially, once we've upgraded kUSD to aUSD, well, the prerequisite there is there will be a bridge between Acala and Karura, right? And you essentially have two trading venues on chain for aUSD. One is on the Karura side, one is on the Acala side. And then both of them, we're also gonna have aUSD on centralized exchanges as well as DEXs on other chains, other places. So once that happens, you have arbitrage opportunity, and this is really good because essentially for Karura, we're almost like a closed door village right now. We wanted to open the village so that there are other places to provide trading venues, so that there is utility on one side, but also arbitrage opportunity on the other side. And then the more charge opportunities there is, the more people involved in arbitraging, buying low, selling high on the other side. Then there will be better for supply and demand, and also keeping the peg healthy for aUSD. And this is probably another probably like a side effect once we connect the two networks or economy. And the more trading venue that we get aUSD to and be the routing assets on other DEXs, the more opportunity there for arbitrages. And then the better that the peg can stay stable, and then the more resilient the coin would be. Yeah, so you're spot on.
Awesome question. Thank you. Yeah, it looks like I am checking out before. Is there a minimum for staking ACA? I think all the ACA staking questions, they're going to be outlined and really clearly in a blog that we're going to publish after the call. Yeah, so if we like, we can move along to the next point of the agenda, which is the EVM Plus updates and what to expect there. Betty, if you could provide some color on where we are with the EVM Plus on Karura.
Yeah, sure. So we are about to have a testnet set up on both Acala testnet and Karura testnet for the EVM Plus and the bridge that we're gonna launch, the multi-chain bridge. Yeah, so that's progressing really well. Probably next week we're gonna have a testnet out for the bridge. And then as for the EVM Plus itself, I think folks can actually, well, if you are a developer and if you're really keen, you can get a developer account and then start deploying contracts onto the testnet. So there is so in the technical section of our Discord, there is an EVM channel there that you guys can join, and if you have any questions you encounter when you deploy contracts and stuff like that you can ask straight out there. Yeah, and then for the EVM Plus, we're still I should say we're still early stage for this whole thing. There are integrations already there for the native assets to be available on the EVM that you can just like call those contracts and use ACA dot and etc. In your contract. You probably can also call DEX and a few other things, the pre-compiled contracts that are being made available. And then, but there are a few quirks for deploying contracts there. So that's why you should really go into the documentation and figure things out. Things like gas fees, and also how you can use developer account that you can actually test before you actually make them public. Those are actually features, right? But because they're different, so they are I still call them like quirks compared to other EVM platform. They are really features introduced by Substrate, and then we kind of merge that into our EVM Plus. So yeah, so if you are really keen, you can now be the, I guess, alpha or beta test developers. And then feel free to ask questions in that technical channel, and developers can help you out. And then as we talk about EVM Plus, there are 3 phases or 3 stages how we think about launching this in sequence to make sense. The stage number 1 is we're going to launch a bridge so that villages no longer stay as villages. So at least they can become a little town that's got at least like a highway into other township, right? So first of all, we're going to launch bridges. Bridges will be on Karura that connects to other blockchains like Ethereum, Solana, and things like that. And then it will also be launched on Acala, and this will also connect Acala to Karura, which essentially helps our kUSD and aUSD unification, right? And then that will open up multiple trading venues for the aUSD, and then also a lot of economic activity can happen then, right? So that's one aspect. So that's stage 1 is launch the bridges so that we become a connected township rather than a little village closed door. So that's stage 1. And then stage 2, we're going to launch, help a few projects to launch that they are ready. So like money markets, those are variable yield money markets. So your aUSD can then generate interest rate essentially. And there are potentially a couple of different money markets, I believe. There are natively built. There are also money markets come from other ecosystem like Ethereum. And then the stage number 3 is really wide open. Right? Stage 2 probably, yeah. So money markets and probably also maybe DEXs. And then stage 3, then it will be wide open, permissionless deployment. And then there will be projects that maybe we don't even know will deploy on top of it. So that's about the 3 stages of launching. And then as of like those ones, we've already announced some of those who will be launching like natively built on Acala. But the foreign contracts, like we haven't actually announced any of those. So yeah, so just wait and see, and you will know.
That's awesome. I'm sharing in the community call whiteboard. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that we currently have a couple bounties open that we created for in conjunction with Acala and Acala's presence at ETH Denver. So we debuted a nice EVM workshop there with some of our team, and we have some bounties. I just linked to it. If you're a developer and you're just kind of looking to play around with our escrow contract and see how EVM Plus is functioning, and you want to scale up a dApp and see if you can integrate aUSD, we have 2 bounties open right now, $1,000 reward, and we have a $4,000 reward for deploying your dApp on Acala's EVM Plus. So take a look at that if you are a developer. We'd love to see some cool entries before it closes at the end of the month. Great. So I don't see any other hands raised for Q&A here on the stage, but I think that we covered every agenda item, and we'll continue to monitor the community call chat for any other questions. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Dan, Betty?
Yeah, so if you monitor the on-chain activity, you can see I think staking will be going live very shortly.
Yeah, this hasn't been
So
announced.
so that was
but
an hour or so
should be
ago.
going live pretty
Probably
soon.
another
Yeah.
hour. Yeah.
So I think Josh put the block number in the chat.
Oh, cool. Perfect.
Yeah, a couple hours. Cool. And then Blink.
Hey,
Got a few
everybody.
minutes. Hey.
Hey.
Yeah, I'll try to make it quick. So real quick to circle back to what you were just talking about. I was wondering if there would be any possibility to have locked ACA for staking. You know, much like a star has locked a star for their DApp staking and stuff like that. And there were a couple other protocols of playing with ideas like that. And you know, the example I would use in my head, if that was possible, is if, you know, like it's yet to be vested out to us and that's how it's locked, right? We could like maybe choose to have it locked for even longer than the original vesting time, right? And then maybe we could lock it up that way. But yeah, that was one question I had immediately. I thought maybe you could answer.
Yeah, so that's related to what I kind of like a proposal for I guess a longer term or more permanent ACA staking palette to be built and powered by the Acala network, right? So in that case, then as you lock your ACA, you're not only just getting, you know, the occasional buybacks and also the fee shares, but you also get the dApps providing rewards into the staking. And the first one we already kind of, if we want to go that route, Aquadao is kind of already doing that, but they can just fund the ACA staking palette instead doing it on its own palette, right? And then that also means open doors for future dApps that they can just drop their rewards into the ACA staking palette, and any ACA stakers can kind of enjoy that pool. And then with that kind of setup, you can also do things like you can do staking while also participating in governance. And then, of course, once you get into that domain, there's a lot more that you can innovate, right? You can do a lot of like vested approach, and then also maybe you can direct your tokens to do whatever in terms of vesting in that staking pool, and then you can do certain things as well. So yeah, so that's probably why you know, that might be a better longer term solution for us. Yeah. So yeah, I hope that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And then my second question was, if I may, for aUSD initial liquidity being cross-chain and everything, if there was, you know, because we want to make sure that there's enough liquidity to grow to be used, you know, obviously both across Acala and Karura, and then obviously beyond. And I was just wondering if Acala or Karura themselves will be, you know, basically bolstering the aUSD supplies that will be there for the liquidity to go across, or if that's just going to be a completely like community driven thing through minting.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So we can do that today on Karura if we want to, you know, make it 20 mil or whatever. So if that's the arbitrary target we want to achieve, right? But this is like chicken and egg bootstrapping. So once you've got aUSD or kUSD, you also want it to have a place to go, right? So that's why I see also someone asking about collateral staking. So that's also why we don't directly incentivize minting stablecoin. That's very easy to do. It's very tempted, short-term pleasure that you can achieve, right? So you can imagine if we incentivize minting stablecoin, you can just shoot it up, you know, right away. But that's gonna have very damaging effect because you're certainly going to go off peg because your supply is way over your demand once you do that. And so the way that we are approaching this is trying to incentivize the utility. So for example, you can see our behavior. We try to incentivize kUSD or aUSD pools more. So that's the utility. And then to encourage minting of the stable coin. And of course, this approach is limited by how many utility places that aUSD and kUSD have, right? So that's why building an ecosystem is what we have been doing, right? So once there's a money market for aUSD lending and borrowing, and then once there's aUSD DAO, then we incentivize those places and collaborate with those dApps to incentivize utility of aUSD rather than just purely incentivize minting. And so that's why it's important to open up those utility spots, whether it's through dApps or whether it's through trading pairs on different places. And then once we've done that, then certainly we'll go into the ground. That's why that's why the two networks are still in training wheels. That's why as a Acala team, we will still go in and then provide liquidity. By provide liquidity, we literally mean creating aUSD and kUSD for that matter, and then to inject that into the applications to bootstrap it. And we will go together with the community, of course, right? Because usually when it happens, there will be incentive programs or places. Maybe we have to go off to other parachains to do that. So that's why we are doing all sorts of this sort of aUSD ecosystem program, right? To actually go to those places and inject aUSD liquidity directly into those pools and dApps. So it's not going to be either or. So it's going to be us going in, as well as collaborating with the community, as well as everybody, who's got. So this is also not just Acala community or Karura community, but because it's essentially DOT, KSM, and KR and ACA community, we are all liquidity holders essentially that can go in together to provide liquidity.
Yeah, your response in terms of incentivizing the minting of stablecoins and how that could be, detrimental to the long term is pretty much exactly what I was driving at. So thank you for mentioning that. And then just one more question, please, and thank you everybody for being patient. Are there any like solid integrations or any planned integrations that you're willing to let me know about? Like, just because I want to know.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I think the most practical and immediate, right, is the homeland dApp ecosystem, right? So basically, dApps built on top of Acala. So there's a natively built money market, and then there's also a foreign money market that will be launched on the EVM Plus. And then the native money market, it's slightly different because it also uses LDOT to do the rebalancing. So you have a alternative source of U generation, and then so that's the natively built money market. And then it also has a added feature where it can provide stable U to outside crypto world, where almost like a sort of approach, like high risk challenge, low risk challenge, and then to balance out the crypto side of the user demand and I guess non-crypto world user demand. So that's the native money market that has integration into Polkadot as well as Acala functionalities. And then there's also foreign money market. I don't want to drop them in because they're quite well known, right? So we're basically waiting for some green lights to be able to do that. But it's the money markets that that works elsewhere. So
awesome, super long-term bullish. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, unfortunately, we are a little past the hour, so we do have to close it out and jump to some other team meetings. But thank you, everyone, so much for coming. We'll keep knocking about the community call chat to answer any questions, and the Acala chat. Keep an eye out for ACA staking. We're going to publish a blog. I believe we're counting down. It's within an hour, right? So we'll see when that block time shows up, and ACA staking will go live. Exciting times. So thanks again, and we'll post the recording to this call as soon as it's available.
Thanks, guys.
Night. Thanks. Night, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.